Hello and welcome into this. This is the Cafe Nightly Show. This is your host, the Goldsmith, and it is Monday the 18th of 2024. Uh, Happy Monday! Almost blew the intro in that I've been out for several days, and very glad to be back. A little bit of hiatus on traveling, but boy, did we have some things happen today and the last week. We're not going to go all the way back an entire week here. We are going to we're going to look at all the things that were announced today, Monday, and look at some of these announcements and how they tie into the future of Upland. Again, it could go pretty deep on this, could be hours, but ultimately going to review what we did get as announcements today. That includes Stock Car Pro, that includes Prop Lock, that includes the Spark utility coming in the game of Upland, and don't forget the Prime bundles. Get into that. There's definitely some opinion. There's some news elements. We look at the announcements themselves. Good to see you, dopest crew. But ultimately, there is so much that is redefining the future of Upland. All announced, all put out today. There's been some hints and then some suggestions that this is coming, that is coming. We have the details now. We have dates. We know more about mechanics. So we have a lot to go into. And we're going to get into these announcements as we do jump piece by piece. But we do also want to take a couple minutes and reflect on what this looks like in terms of context, how we got here, how it affects the game of Upland moving forward. And realistically, hopefully, putting a pin in things from where we are today and looking forward to what might be different. And oh, by the way, I didn't even have time to talk about when we talk about Spark Utility. We say it in a broad way, but ultimately in a specific way, looking at the final reality of, or the next step, anyways, the next step in defining how cars work, why cars work in Upland, and what to expect moving forward. And that's a big part of the Spark utility here that we got today. We do see moving forward. So with that, let's get into it. We do have to get the disclaimer out of the way as always. All these opinions of myself, the mind of mine only should be taken as game strategy or financial advice. They don't represent the game or the team of Upland. All views and opinions of those who are contributors are theirs and theirs alone. Shouldn't be taken as game strategy advice. Shouldn't be taken as financial advice. Don't represent the game of the Upland team of Upland. Myself, the Goldsmith of the Cafe Nightly Show. Easy enough. And there's so many announcements. The first thing to do is to pop the first announcement, take a look at it, and again, start moving forward here, because ultimately here's the big one. The big one out of the blue, but previously discussed. Just getting built on the fact that we do have these partnerships that evolve. We had this whole concept starting. Oh my gosh, I was going to say starting a year ago, but it's more than that now. Starting almost a year and a half ago, was this partnership between Upland and Stock Car Pro of Brazil. The idea that this was going to bring a new race element to the game of Upland. The idea that this partnership was going to bring not only vehicles in that had some tie to the real world, but also, race watch parties, which we've definitely seen, but it ties into the real world of Stock Car Pro with real racetracks or simulating real racetracks coming into the game of Upland for Stock Car Pro. And then now here we are with some realization of this promise of specific vehicles coming to the game, reflecting the partnership between Upland and Stock Car Pro. It's time for brand new racing competitions. This time, we're asking Stock Car Pro Series car owners to jump into the inaugural Interlagos racetrack races to rack up some laps. Again, this is specifically for Interlagos. This is specifically with those with Stock Car Pro Series cars. This is a limited number of individuals, but this is an opportunity to actually do something different based on the type of race car that you have now. And again, that type of race car tied specifically with the partnership between Upland and Stock Car Pro. The competition will be fierce as you fight to complete 70 laps to be in line to win an exclusive stock car. What let's take a look. Let's take a look at the details. Again, this is one of those that the details were limited enough in the announcement that Upland had to go and make some future updates, or they had to augment the information that was put out there. We'll go into those augmentations, but let's look at the announcement to begin with. Upland is still to announce the first ever stock car racing event. This unique challenge will be putting your racing skills and endurance to the test, inspired by grueling lap structures that make stock car racing famous. Again, when we talk about Stock Car Pro Series, if you're not familiar, it's Brazilian stock car racing. With the Brazilian stock car racing, we are talking about these, generally speaking, 70 lap events. Some of them are more, but generally the 70 lap event structure, and that's what Upland is kind of trying to emulate here. When they say 70 laps, they're talking about the repetition of that cycle around that lap, but they're talking about representing that through multiple races. The Stock Car Series will be run regularly each season. So this is the inaugural. This is happening this season, or this season break. We are ending harvest season. We are going into Wonderland season, and that is the period of time we're talking about it being special, stand alone, stand apart from the seasons, where something special can happen. Upland's talked about this since they've had seasons defined the way they've had seasons defined for the last 7 months. I'm going to say 6-7 months. Since we've had seasons defined the way we've had those defined, we were told that we would make this period special in between the two seasons. And this is the first time where we're really seeing a strong series that's going to happen every season get introduced. I think this was one of the plans, long-term, short-term, mid-term, and this is ultimately something that is for a limited number of players, but it also gives a little bit more utility to those cars that people have been collecting over the period of the last 6 months here anyways, that Upland has had these out. Actually, a little longer than that if we go all the way back to Genesis Week 2024, the first one being given out. But again, the way in which and when they were actually available to be earned and won, that has happened slowly over time here as well. To win, players will have to complete their fastest 70 races with only times on the official Interlagos track counting towards the leaderboard standing. The challenge is straightforward. Complete to achieve the fastest competitive time for your top 70 races. That means you have to hit 70 in order to have this, and 70 races being averaged to get your top competitive time. And show us who the real stock car champion is. The duration is a 10-day period. Today, Tuesday, the 19th, 9 a.m. PT is when the period opens. You do have to get 70 races in before Friday, November the 29th at 9 a.m. PT. Before you get too excited, it is very important that you know this is only for a very specific period of time, but a very specific class of cars. So if you're going to be racing your Series 1 or you're going to be racing your Series 2R, those don't qualify. Stock Car Pro Series specifically. Competitive, complete at least 70 races with the fastest combined time at the legendary Interlagos Stock Car Racetrack in Sao Paulo. Eligible cars, only official stock cars in a race with an MPS of 174 to 270 will count. This is key. Players will have 10 days to complete the challenge with a goal of at least 70 races completed. Aiming for around 7 races a day is ideal. Again, we only have a 10-day period to complete this, but there's flexibility to pace yourself however you prefer. Players can race more than 70 races if they choose. Only their 70 fastest races will count towards their combined time. Your final ranking will depend on your cumulative time. So every second counts. Again, cumulative time, 70 races. You can look at an average, you look at the total amount, however you want to look at it, but it ultimately means if you are completing 70 races, or at least 70 races, every second of every race is going to count towards that overall score. The power-ups matter. Power-ups offer strategic advantage that could make all the difference. The fastest times will come from players who combine the right power-ups with their car's use effectively. If you need a power-up, You can choose from various shops in Upland's secondary marketplace. Again, Upland has sold these packages. Click here for a list of power-ups in the shop for secondary market and pick a boost from other players to gain your extra edge. Upland has these sales not very often. When they had the sales last, again, they were accumulated. People had purchased them. And then obviously they go back out in the market in the secondary for people to purchase. And that's kind of what's creating a life for these is this event. This event is ultimately is what was always meant to kind of necessitate the power-ups where you are in a race series, you are in a classification. It's all of these cars that are Stock Car Pro Series cars. You can't overdo it. You can't put too much boost on to exceed the MPS, but you can still sneak a couple in there and really stand out as far as the race score. Keynotes on these. It is a matter of using them judiciously and using them effectively when you get into a race. Theoretically, if you're not using them effectively, it may not improve your race in any significant way. If they use it at the wrong time, they could cause a skid or otherwise block you from doing as good of a score as you would have done without them. So there is a little bit of skill in regards to the use of these boosts. Top racers and participants will receive the following awards. Top 3 racers earn the exclusive Stock Car Pro vehicle along with commemorative 2024 Stock Car Pro badge. That is a Pro Series. This is another Pro Series car that's being given away. Top 3. All people who complete 70 races who qualify with the right cars receive a special Stock Car Pro Series badge just for competing. Stock car sale. For those who haven't yet acquired a stock car but want to join the race, we're launching a special stock car race featuring the 2023 Stock Car Pro Trainer. These trainer cars are perfect for newcomers, designed with balanced stats to help you drive or dive into Stock Car Pro racing with confidence. Registration starts Monday the 18th of November, 9 a.m. PT. The sale starts Tuesday, November 19th, 9 a.m. PT. That's today. Registration is tomorrow sale. 50 total cars available, $99. Okay. There's something to know here. There's something to know is that the previous sales have been two stages. You had to go and buy the Upland bundle. You had to buy the Stock Car Pro Series bundle. Get lucky. Get the car pass. If you get the car pass, again, you're not guaranteed that you're going to get the car pass. If you get the car pass, you don't know what you're going to get. You will pay the $100 for the car pass. You redeem it. You get what you get. But you have to do that first step. That first step is buy a Stock Car Pro Series bundle first. If you do get a memento, the memento puts you in line to potentially buy the pass. So they had this two-step basis. You had to get lucky to get the Stock Car Pro Series pass. You had to get lucky from taking the memento and having a better than average chance of getting a Stock Car Pro Series car at a special sale, but no guarantee you get it. And once you get it, then you might get a Stock Car Pro Series competition car. It might be a trainer, it might be a pro, but ultimately there is that gate where you have to subscribe to a specific sale to whitelist into an opportunity. Once you whitelist into the opportunity, not a guarantee you'd get the car pass. And then once you get the car pass, not a guarantee what you get. This is a little more direct. This is a little more straightforward. 50 cars available, $99. It will be a trainer. It is a registered to participate type event. So if you get lucky, better position in the rate and the purchase, or better position, a first, second, fifth, 20th in the purchase. There is going to only be 50 of these. So obviously only the earlier people are going to have a chance to purchase. Remember, completing all 70 races within the time window is key to unlocking these rewards. And again, the caveat is there's multiple of the cars available in the Stock Car series, meaning we may see that even if you have a Stock Car Pro Series car and you are competing against everybody else, if they have a little better car, if they use their boost a little differently, it's going to be a strong competition. It's going to be something where you have to bring skill and you're probably going to have to bring these boosts along the way to get there. Again, this is something that does kick off today, is going to run 2 weeks, and with the sale getting started tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PT. Again, that's a big thing. It changes kind of this idea of what those Stock Car Pro Series cars are and why they're different. Upland's talked about having this promise that there is going to be an additional utility for these cars that doesn't exist with other cars, and that's exactly what this is right here. City Pigeon also, you do not need to stake Sparklet to race as of right now. They will. Oh my gosh, I can't read that out loud, City Pigeon, because you're kind of skipping ahead with one of the pieces that is dropping along the way. But absolutely, he said, City Pigeon said he did some races today and did not add anything, only traveling from city to city. Okay, we'll get into it. We'll get into some of these notes here about the notes here. You had some great notes here, City Pigeon, but they are jumping ahead a little bit. We'll get into that right about now. We can skip ahead on the prime racing, but we do have to get to we're going to jump all the way down to talk a little bit about the car utility using Sparklet to charge cars, introducing car charging, vehicle charging with Sparklet. We've got a couple other announcements to jump back into and take a look at, but we're jumping right to this because City Pigeon, you're pushing me that way. You're pushing me that way because you're already dropping in those key bits here. And obviously, that is that car charging coming into the game of Upland. Upland has talked about this in the last couple of weeks that this is coming. This is coming this quarter, and here it is now. We're thrilled to announce a new utility for Sparklet. With the launch of vehicle charging in Upland, you can see the use of Sparklet to power your cars and begin your journey into the future of travel in Upland Metaverse. In this first phase, charging will only be required for travel, but in phase 2, we are going to be seeing that it is extended to charging requirements for racing as well. All right, and I'm going to get into some of the opinions and some thoughts and a little bit of context here, because ultimately cars have enjoyed the ability to travel between cities for a short period of time, but Upland did bring this up several months ago. Cars have been part of the racing infrastructure. That was the first thing that existed before cars could be used to travel between cities in the game of Upland. They were used in racing, and up until now, they've been free. Free for travel. You haven't had to pay anything. You haven't had to take your Sparklet, or you haven't had to spend UPEX. You haven't had to do anything to charge that car up for the race. There's entry fees to be a part of the race. You might have to buy the car, which again, obviously every car in the game of Upland is bought one way or the other, or one. But ultimately, when you had the car, it wasn't costing anything to move it from point A to point B. It didn't cost more to move it from point A to a further point B. But now this is being introduced to be 100% fair. This is something that Upland has talked about from day one. But when we talk about Sparklet utility, or this being another utility of Sparklet, it ultimately means this is also a change in the norm, the change in what we currently see, an addition of cost in a way, an addition of cost of movement in the game of Upland. But it does help balance or help regulate the fact that we already had a cost of movement in the game of Upland between cities, which was either the cost of traveling by train or traveling by bus or traveling by plane, cars traveling between city requiring you to own a car. But now there is an analog of fuel, an analog of cost of travel in staking. We'll get into how that works as of right now. But to get into the full details, including the charging dynamics and how it works, how cars are ranged, and all that, we're going to take a look at this announcement right here. Introducing Sparklet charging in the game of Upland, the next evolution of car travel in our metaverse. Key things here: charging has officially been announced. Upland talked about it, reminded us it was coming. It is here. This is the first phase of Sparklet utility, or increased Sparklet utility in the game of Upland. We will have more. We'll have Sparklet utility when it comes to flights. We'll have Sparklet utility when it comes to racing. Right now, it is requirement of having and staking Sparklet in order to charge cars. Here are the dynamics. In phase 1, car charging is available for all vehicle types except for go-karts. Go-karts are for racing only. Therefore, no charging at this time. In the future, private planes will also require charging with Sparklet. In this first phase, charging is required for travel, but in phase 2, we're excited to extend charging requirements to racing as well. Let's take a look. 3-minute video from the one and only X1. Here's some of the dynamics to it. The 3.5-minute video. I was jumping ahead here, and I know it. I know there's a bit in here, but it is broken down. It is broken down in a verbal form here, or in a way that we can follow along pretty easily. To keep your upland cars ready for travel, charging is now essential for a requirement. Here's how to get started. Check your charging status. This charge status level for each car, a vehicle, is displayed on the NFT's full screen. Ooh, we'll go take a look at that in just a minute. Charging, simply tap the charge button on the vehicle's NFT screen. Here you'll be able to stake Sparklet to initiate the charge. Optimize charge time. The more Sparklet you stake, the faster your vehicle will charge. Once fully charged, or if you decide to remove your Sparklet mid-charge cycle, your Sparklet is returned to you. Each car model has a unique maximum range. Ooh, go figure. Defining how far it can travel on a full charge. As you plan your trip, Upland will show which destinations are within your car's current range and mark cities that exceed your limit as out of range. Upon arriving at a destination, your car's charge level will be updated based on the distance that you have traveled. Again, your original charge, your travel, that's what you have left for travel range moving forward. Upon arriving at your destination, your car's charge level will be updated based on the distance traveled. More to come. This is just the beginning. Vehicle charging with Sparklet not only enhances travel within Upland, but also broadens the future utility of Sparklet itself. We'll be expanding on these features with more exciting updates, so keep an eye out. Prepare for Power Up, and again, prepares to power up to help shape the future of upland transportation. Again, what is this whole idea of this charge apparatus? Charge apparatus, Upland has told us that cars in Upland, cars like our MV Motors, are going to be an equivalent of electric vehicles. We can look at Sparklet as an analog of electricity, charging a car over time, and that's why we can look at it as the staking. You can take a certain amount of charge, put it on the car over a period of time, and you don't lose that original investment. You're not losing Sparklet. Sparklet's sat and staked on your car for a period of time, increases the charge level. Once your car is charged, it has a specific range, a specific travel that it can do. And while it's doing that, while it's traveling, it is using that charge up. And once you get to your destination, you can either charge for continuing a journey, or you have a amount of charge left for your next journey. And that's kind of this idea and this concept that now traveling longer distances not only takes more time, but it might take more charge. And taking more charge means that you have more reason to charge your car, and it might take longer to charge your car. So you have to use that as a dynamic when figuring car travel between cities, whether it makes as much sense to use your car or to use a train or to use a plane. If you're going to travel longer distances, you're going to have to tie up more of your Sparklet for a longer period of time. And jump into the comments, because boy, City Pigeon got in here early with travel. And yes, it is a big one. It is 70 races, not 70 laps. Yes, City Pigeon, 70 races, not 70 laps. The analog of 70 laps was to tie to the reality of Stock Car Pro Series racing. That's kind of why Upland is using the number 70. That is a common number in many of the Stock Car Pro Series races. Not that they're all 70 laps, but that is a common structure in the Stock Car Pro Series. That's why, Upland kind of carries that over. When we look at the car racing, questions for later, Goldie. When do you get this? Will miles be out on cars when racing? Again, that's a ways out. Miles odometers not out on cars yet. That is something Upland's talked about. The idea of a cumulative odometer, the amount of miles you put in your cars affecting its condition, affecting its ability to continue without being repaired. That's something Upland's talked about from day one. Upland said this is not here now. This is coming in the future. We're at that point where we're starting to get new levels of utility. We aren't at the odometer phase yet. That is something that's still coming. City Pigeon putting in no miles odometer yet. They do not count on cars as of yet. Yeah, that's where we are right now. Did some races today. This is City Pigeon. Did some races today, and they did not add anything. Only traveling city to city count right now. Yes, the racing does not take away from your number of miles in charge. You have to charge the car specifically to travel between one city to the next. You do not need to stake Sparklet to race as of now. Yes, that's correct as well here. And the keynote here, and as City Pigeon says, the only thing about the trainer is that it is not yet eligible for the leaderboards during the normal racing season. MPS 174 is not on any of the racing boards at this time. Okay, that's fair enough. I see the notes here, and again, we do need to put in that this is going to be something that when we talk about the race series of the Stock Car Pro Series, that could be something that evolves. Upland did not spell that out, but Upland did say that before. Is they're looking at this being something they do long term, as with all the racing series in the game. They did define what goes in the race series. They kind of give this utility of the Stock Car Pro Series cars, and they may be evolving that a little bit in the future. We'll have to watch and see how this inaugural race series goes in the next 10 days to see how that gets done. Zarina, the one and only Blue Rain, the new update sucks because it is making people spend a valuable resource for a car that actually has no utility. The only thing working for cars was the free travel, and now that's and that's kind of the concept that I've been looking at. The angle I've been looking at on this is, if you are looking at Spark utility, it says, "Oh, here's one more thing you can do for Sparklet." Now we want to have Sparklet even more, because if we have cars, now we need to take our Sparklet and divide it as a resource. It has to be used for building structures. It has to be used for cars. And Blue, to your point, but also counter your point, yeah, the utility of cars. Why travel with a car? You're not spending any USD, any UPEX to travel between two cities once you own the car. So it was looking like a free lunch in a way, and you did have to own the car. It did take a little longer to travel than some other travel methods. And you had to, essentially bring that car with you. It had to be in the city that you were traveling. And if you got separated from your car, you had to travel back to the city where your car was to pick up that travel again. But the idea that this was always coming it was baked in the pie. Upland had essentially said, you will have to use charging to use your cars. That is something that's been coming for a long time. It's one of those things that Upland put the utility of cars out before the utility of charging existed. So we got to see what it was like to travel around with cars without having to stake Sparklet, without having to divide that resource. And now we're having to divide that resource. And does that make cars less valuable now, or does it make it less exciting to travel with a car than it was yesterday? Because before yesterday, you didn't have to wait to charge a car, because yesterday you didn't have to, take a resource, Sparklet, and sit it there to charge for a period of time. Absolutely. I could definitely understand that argument. And it is a fair one to be made. However, it was also something that was promised or baked in the pie. This is how cars were supposed to work from day one. This is something that, again, since the utility lagged, it just felt like that wasn't a part of cars. It felt like we weren't necessarily going to have to do that long term, but we do. We have to do that. It is something that was baked in the pie. It is when we look at the actual cost or time or effort or energy put into charging, yes, we do have to look at how that affects the allocations resources. The more resources I'm allocating to charge my car, the less I can have available to build structures. And it does change how I look at traveling the car versus doing other things. I can see that I have charging available. Spark hours One spark, obviously, is 1,000 sparklet. Spark hours needed to charge 4.065 to a full charge. Full charge time remaining. I can get started. Stake your sparklet in order to race, in order to charge. And I would have to go and unstake some sparklet in order to move some sparklet around. And that's an easy enough thing. You can go and take a look at my sparklet staked right here. We can come over here and go pick a structure that I am going to be happy pulling sparklet off. Maybe I've got enough sparklet to pull off here. We should be able to do it, maybe. And then wait for that to update, I'm sure. There we go. That'll be enough sparklet to go and stake for racing. And we'll come back and do that. Reminder, right now, we do see the majority of sparklet right now being staked in New Orleans. There is an incentive to continue to do so. There is a road to the big game continue on between now and the big game this year to continue to build out in New Orleans, earning points or staking sparklet along the way, getting points towards an airdrop that's going to happen after the big game this year, 2025, or this season, I should say, 2024-2025 season in February. So it is something that people are continue to have the majority of their spark stake in New Orleans, and that's just what I am doing just there. Let's go back to take a look at my cars so I can go and stake on one of them to start to build it up. And yes, to Zorina's point, to Blue's point, yes, it does take an allocation of sparklet. I have to take it away from other activities. I am seeing that my cars are 100% charged right now. I do have to travel between cities in order to use that charge up, but it says the spark hours as of right now is 4.065. That is full. So if I go and I travel between cities for that 4.065 equivalent of spark, it's going to take me 4 spark for 1 hour, or 1 hour for 1 hour for 4 sparklet. Yeah, there we go. To get to that 4 spark level equivalent, or a 4 spark hour equivalent. So again, I just freed up about a spark. It could take me 4 hours to charge that car fully. It happens to be charged fully now. I can go to a car that I'm actually in the same city as in order to travel. That's what I'm going to have to do. And to just to see how that dynamic works. Come over here, come back over here to my cars. From my car, the one car that I know that I'm in the same city as that's ready to go is this red TR. I believe that's it. Travel is pretty simple in the game of Upland. We see this is fully charged right here. Equivalent full charge is 5.3842 spark hours to charge. Again, I shouldn't have to charge this at all. It says that you have an additional 959 sparklet available for staking if I were to do so. But again, I don't have to stake anything because this is fully charged. But let's take a quick look because we're already at a full charge. We're going to go travel. We're going to go choose another city. We're going to go choose a property. We're going to go set that travel. We're going to hit it. And it says current time to destination, 1 hour, 5 minutes, 57. Distance is 335.29 kilometers. We hit the travel, and we should be able to see that travel, that's within the range. If I was outside the range of the vehicle of the charge, it would give me a warning that it would be outside of my travel range, but that's not the case. We are able to travel. We are using this vehicle, and in travel on the vehicle, we are going to see that when I get to the site, I'm going to have a declining amount of sparklet. A declining amount of charge. I'm going to need more sparklet in order to charge back up. But as of right now, we have an hour and 5 minutes to travel to get there, and then I would be able to go in, take a look, recharge that car as need be, and be ready to travel again. Quick notes here. I think I will just pay the UPEX for a flight. Understand that position. And yes, long-term, midterm, that cost. Did Upland set the cost right? Is the equivalent here, different cars, different volumes, but is the equivalent of 4 spark hours being charged in order to travel a few hundred kilometers? Is that making sense long term? Is that something that is the right on the economic sense? People right now, there's two notes or two important considerations. Number one, the accumulation of sparklet, something that people have worked on for years. Sparklet has or did split, or not a traditional split, but there was a down listing. Upland, to make a difference on the down listing, had gone and made another distribution, or had made a non-compensated distribution. You have to pay to purchase for people who had held on to Sparklet or earned Sparklet or purchased Sparklet prior to the TGE. That dilutionary distribution was really kind of to make the difference between, or help make the difference between, the amount of Sparklet people paid at one cost to the fact that the new pricing for after the TGE was a much lower price. So people did earn, or do have, a lot more Sparklet now than they did previously. Upland has talked about adjusting because of the value of Sparklet currently, what Sparklet can do. In theory, if the price of Sparklet goes up, that 4 spark hour equivalent to charge a vehicle fully, that might be adjusted. It might be less than 4 in the future. If the price of Sparklet goes in another direction, it's possible that's down adjusted, and we see the cost to charge a car increases in the idea of Sparklet. But if Upland has hit the titration here properly right now, it's an argument to be made that they didn't. But if they hit the titration right as of today, Uplanders, people playing, can look at that car and say, oh, it's still better for me to stake the Sparklet here and move it back to structures. The one thing to note here for the utility of Sparklet is there is more utility in travel, using your car to travel between two places. Even though there's a cost, even though you have to buy a car and then stake to it, the utility to use that car is greater than the utility of a structure. So the alternate of taking your Sparklet, if you're not using it to charge your car, is to take that Sparklet and construct structures. If those structures have a greater utility than a car right now, I 100% understand the idea of, I want to build and build and build. I'm building a permanent structure in the game of Upland. I'm putting my Sparklet on a structure. It stays there for a period of time. At the end of that period of time, there is a visual structure that has some utility potentially down the road. It has the ability potentially to take storage, which doesn't exist right now. But we do have, as of right now, the ability to decorate that structure. That structure stands as a visual aspect on the game, on the board of Upland. And theoretically, you could house a meta venture in that structure. So there is a reason to have a structure. But the travel is to get between cities. The idea of doing it with car versus plane versus train is a difference in UPX spend. It also potentially, taking our car, gets us into areas that we wouldn't otherwise be able to get. And there was this one promise. There was this one promise of these car cities, these cities that you can only get to by car. That was Lake Tahoe, with it being the first of them. In order to get in, you had to use a car. And I'm going to actually kind of counter this point of the importance of cars, because that is changing, and that is changing as part of a new bundle here. And the reason why that's changing as part of a new bundle is because Upland has this Prime Bundle sale. Let's get back to it, take a look. The Prime Bundle sale. And in the Prime Bundle sale, there are going to be terminals, or there are going to be private air strips in a city that we were told was a car travel city. Well, you can fly in now. It's not going to be commercial. It's not going to be by train, but it is going to be flying potentially into the city of Lake Tahoe without having to use a car, which, again, it kind of goes counter to the concept of, this is a car city. This is one of the perks of having a car, is we can get into a city we can't get into the car. Granted, an airplane is its own sort of investment. An airplane is a status symbol in the game of Upland. It's a reward for people who have reached a certain status symbol, and then they have to pay a pretty significant cost. Again, maybe not the cost of a plane, but a pretty significant cost to be able to, meet that threshold and be able to travel by plane. But then they can get to these different cities that theoretically cars are supposed to be restricted to, which is like the South Lake Tahoe. That was kind of the point here, was we are restricted to traveling by car. Now we have another form of travel. And again, let's take a look at that sale and where these terminals are coming from and how that sale is structured. But again, this concept of flight and travel being two different things, the idea of cars being able to have this special utility that other travels doesn't touch, is kind of diluted a little bit by plane travel, private plane travel, personal plane travel, being the equivalent of car travel. I get the argument. I get the argument that you could say plane versus car, but ultimately the language of this is something specific to cars. This is utility. This is a city that's segmented specifically for car owners. And then you create another utility, airplanes. At the time that we talked about traveling into South Lake Tahoe, Upland wasn't even putting the concept of you're going to have a plane and be able to travel in the future. That wasn't even there on the short or midterm promises at that point. So I understand, people buying into the idea of South Lake Tahoe, thinking I can get the car, other people can't. And City Pigeon, personal aircraft would be just like a car for travel. It is not public transport. Correct. It's not public transport, but the language of this is a car city. This is how we travel. And that it could be seen as a little bit of a departure from the original promise. But yes, private travel, there's not public travel into these cities. But again, different type of travel utility. It does affect it a little differently. But yes, it is going to be you traveling with your vehicle. Key there is vehicle as opposed to public transportation getting into the city. Let's take a look at how this sale is going to work. And I've got some thoughts about cost and pricing. And pricing and cost is key here because we have a few of these sales. They sell in USD and they have some sweeteners. There's some really nice things in there. But you kind of have to look at the whole scale of what the cost is overall, what people are paying, and what people are going to get. Because again, if the best of the best looks pretty darn shiny, but the stuff that's in between, how does that sugar out? Let's get into the details. As we approach the launch of private travel in the game of Upland, obviously cars exist for private travel, private air travel in the game of Upland. We are thrilled to introduce more private airport hangars as part of the newest Prime bundles. Again, something I'm excited about. I've tried to get one of these terminals. Did not happen. I haven't got my hangar yet. It's something that people are going to continue to quest for. But again, if these sales are going to continue to be in USD and they're going to be bundles and they're going to be random chance where you don't know what you're going to get, but you're buying something all the same, spending USD, maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't. This is going to be something that's, you have to look at the overall value of the sale, what your chances are. Is it a lottery ticket you're buying? Is the lottery ticket a 1 out of 10 chance and you're paying a pretty exorbitant fee for? Or is it something that you are getting a full value out of it, and what you get out of it is something that you want to have regardless. You're happy with what you get regardless of if you get the shiny brass ring or not. And again, this is something that we can look at the numbers a few different ways. This is something that individuals have to make the judgment on for themselves. Again, I say not game strategy, not financial advice. Don't go ahead and buy one of these bundles because of something I say, and don't stop buying it because of something I say. But I do want to put out that idea that it is important to look at what you're getting for what you're paying. A lot of people won't be happy if they pay the full amount and don't get the shiny brass ring here along the way. Registration did start today, 18th, 9 a.m. PT. The sale itself is tomorrow, the 19th at 9 a.m. PT. There are 10 international airports in the bundles. There are 2 landmarks. There are 50 private airplanes. This is a limited sale, high value pool. Again, these are high value properties. 50 private airports. When we talk about airport terminals versus train terminals versus these private airport terminals, the value, the cost along the way, you've kind of had things all thrown all over the place. The private airport terminals have been sold in bundles, so we haven't really had it's $400, it's $300, it's $700, differentiating it from what a train terminal is versus a plane terminal versus a true international plane terminal. But we do know that, it does have a value in excess of a standard property. It has a utility that other properties don't have, in that you can land planes there, in that you will be able to, Upland has confirmed, at some point in the future, not now, use those locations, just integrated, built in, as being able to sell planes from those locations as well. So there is a reason to have a plane terminal, no question, to be able to have those private airport terminals no question that that is a differentiated special properties. But we'll have to look at the pricing. 10 international terminals, no question, they'll sell for about $1,500, depending on the city, about $1,500 per international terminal. So yes, very significant prize there, very significant brass ring to reach to. And 2 landmarks. Landmarks very significant in that their dividends are adjusted by the value of the property based on the fact that it's a landmark, but also there's a one-of-one structure that gets built there. They really stand out on the map. If you want to own that as a piece of this is my trophy, this is my landmark, this really says something about me, and this is your bragging rights, that is something that people have a lot of interest in. But also because of the landmark, because it's something with a one-of-one structure, there is that notoriety there that can help stand out on the map as well. City Pigeon saying there's a 12.4 chance of getting any terminal or landmark. That was a number we're going to look at, but yes, that is a good number. So you have a 12.4 chance, which is a better than average chance, or better chance we've had in some of these other sales. But now we have to look at cost versus value. Let's take a look at the specifics of how this sale is set. And to look at cost versus value, we do look at one other thing that is worth noting, and I do want to keep noting every time we have one of these sales. There is a difference between USD and UPX. Upland is going to continue to keep this idea that there's 1,000 UPX in $1, or there is this equivalence where $1 equals 1,000 UPX, or 1,000 UPX equals $1. That's not the way the current market works. When you look at a property that you are trying to sell that has a market value of 100,000 UPX, is it going to have a market value of $100 USD? That's not the reality in the current market. That's not generally what is seen. Again, properties are sold on a case-by-case basis or individual property basis. We know that there isn't one exchange rate where blank number of UPX is blank dollars on the secondary market, because you're not buying UPX on the secondary market. But there is a differentiation between the markets of properties in one city to the next on USD versus one city to the next in UPX. Very, very important. USD versus UPX being two different markets. So with that said, let's take a look at how this pricing breaks out. Let's look at the likelihood that you're going to get things. And thank you for that dropping that in, City Pigeon. 12.4 chance of getting a terminal or a landmark. That's your brass rings, right? 12.4 chance of getting one of these brass rings. Get ready to take your upland journey to new heights. Literally, as we approach the launch of air travel in the game of Upland, again, private air travel, thrilled to introduce these new private airport hangars. General aviation airports are more than just landing spots. These locations provide exclusive properties where you can construct unique hangar structures. And again, Upland's talked about being able to sell airplanes from those hangars. Much like showrooms, these hangars will be able to buy and sell aircraft, opening a new business opportunity within Upland. Again, tied to and locked to specific properties. You have to own a specific property to have this opportunity at this type of meta venture. Opening a lot of general aviation airports won't just mean a place to park. Again, it's a step in prestige. It's going to be on the map. People are going to know the property. People are going to travel to it. It increases options for travel and the ability to create a vibrant marketplace for private air travel. So prime bundles. We talked about what you're getting. Again, 50 private airports are in there, 10 international terminals, and 2 landmarks in the mix. You obviously do have properties we're going to get into. You're actually buying something with the sweeteners taking the place of the main the main properties that are in there. Additionally, at least half of these bundles will include one or more collection properties. Okay, collection properties, not that they don't have any enhanced value, but different collection values, different collection properties have different collection values. Having one collection property has a limited enhanced value because you ultimately have to have the entire collection to get the multiplier on your dividends. So collection properties are nice, but a single collection property only has so much value. It only goes so far. But selling on the secondary absolutely is an option. But to acquire a one collection property often means you're going to have to hunt down other properties in order to complete that collection. Additionally, half of these properties going to have that collection property. It enhances the overall value of the properties that are in this bundle. Once a bundle is purchased, all properties will be delivered directly to the buyer. That means that we don't have reservations. That means we don't have the need to travel and mint these properties in another city. Monday the 18th is when the registration started. Sales starts tomorrow, the 19th, 9 a.m. PT. Price per bundle, $300 USD. Oh my gosh, that isn't cheap. That's on average $100 per property. Again, each bundle has 3 properties. $300 gets you 3 properties. We could look at the value of each property. We can't. Upland has not said what properties specifically are in these bundles. There was a time a long time ago when we did some special sales. We did in Chicago where Upland put an entire list out before this happened. They said, here's all the properties. This was in the Hidden Gems. Here's all the properties that are going to be in the Hidden Gems. So you can see all the properties that you could possibly get. You could possibly go in and mint. It tells you what the mint value are. So you could have this idea of what properties you want to mint. If we could have that list and say, here's all the properties you get. And then you can see, oh my gosh, look at all these properties in Kansas City. Those aren't too exciting to me. If you could do all that, that could augment somebody's decision on whether or not they want to buy into this bundle. That is something that I would love to see. Again, nobody that knows exactly what they're going to get. A lot of people are buying this with the idea that it's a lottery ticket, a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 8. I could say 1 in 8, 12.4 chance, but about a 1 in 8 chance of getting a terminal or a landmark. That is a 1 in 8 lottery ticket. You are getting something regardless. You are going to get 3 properties, but since Upland's going to use that 1,000 to 1, 1,000 UPX to $1 equivalent, that is kind of a false equivalence. If you're going to end up with I'm going to be 87.6%. 87.6% of people aren't going to get the landmark. They aren't going to get a terminal. They're ultimately looking at how Upland, looks at the value of properties, and they are randomized properties. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get in that property bundle. Maybe there's a collection in there, 50% chance that there's going to be at least one property in your bundle that is a collection. But again, that does not necessarily mean on the open market that your 3 properties together is going to have a value of above $300 if you were to try to turn around and try to sell those properties immediately after that bundle. That is something I want to put out there when people are considering whether to buy this bundle or not. Think about that, what the reality is. $300 for some people is a lot of money. It is not a guarantee of a terminal. Don't think that this is a quick flip, that you're buying this just to flip out and sell out, because likely if you try to turn around and sell, what you get, if you're 87.6% of the populace, you are going to turn around and sell that. More than likely, no guarantees, but more than likely, that could be at a loss in USD if I tried to sell those 3 properties immediately after the sale. But that doesn't take away from what we're looking at here. That's 10 private airport terminals in Detroit. There's going to be 10 in South Lake Tahoe, 10 in Frederick, 10 in Trenton, 10 in Oakland. That's what we're selling in this bundle, is ultimately 50 private airport terminals are going to be interspersed in all the bundles that go out. That's 10 in Detroit, 10 in South Lake Tahoe, 10 in Frederick, 10 in Trenton, again, 10 in Oakland. International terminals that will be represented. There are 2 international terminals in Tokyo, 2 in Nashville, 2 in Dallas, 2 in Dulles, 1 in New Orleans, and 1 in Bermuda. These are cities that have already had terminals sold. There was terminals reserved, and now those terminals are going out for sale in this bundle fashion. You're not paying a specific amount for that terminal, but getting that terminal is going to give you the full functionality, the full utility of that terminal. Keeping in mind, the highest use case of terminals is right after a city release, with people traveling back out of that city to go back somewhere else in the game of Upland. You are, as a terminal owner in one of these international terminals, you can get a share of travel going out of that city internationally moving forward on a monthly basis. So you do have that ability to have revenue from that terminal long term just by holding it. And then you obviously have the greater visibility, it being a terminal. you have a higher amount than average of people staying to your property. And of course, now Upland has the ability to base a MetaVenture at your terminal, which means you could use that higher visibility property to have a MetaVenture right there as people travel into and travel out of a city. With that noted, there's not very many of these 500 total bundles. So keep that in mind when we look at numbers. As City Pigeon said, a 12.4 chance overall of getting one of these special properties or getting a brass ring here in that case on these bundle sales. The Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., that is a mint price of 3.818 million UPIX. That is one landmark that's available. The other landmark is the Gherkin in London. That's a 7.18 million UPIX mint. Either of these I'd be happy with if I paid $300. I got one of these in addition to that, or as part of my one of three properties. I would be tickled pink. That would be enough for me. I'd be so happy. But two people are going to get a landmark out of 500, right? So that is what would make me happy. That means for me, I'm going to be more than likely one of the 498 people who don't get one of these. That is something key to know. Again, be honest with the averages here. Be honest with the statistics with yourself when you go to purchase. And yes, it is your opportunity to get something. You will get 3 properties. Their value is likely going to add up to over 300,000 UPIX. Isn't that nice? But they are likely not going to include these special properties. With private air travel on the horizon, this sale represents a unique opportunity to shape the future of aviation in Upland. Owning a private Upland airport terminal or landmark adds prestige, while the general travel aviation is going to offer a lot of future versatility for spaces for new MetaVentures, enabling players to create future new businesses centered around air travel. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Chances, and again, taking a chance to be part of Upland's next adventure. Again, this is a chance. You're spending a significant amount of USD for a chance to get one of these properties. A lot of people love random chance property purchases. A lot of people, you have a 0.04% chance of getting a landmark. You get a 2 out of 500. A 2 out of 500 is what you're looking at overall, right? So that would be 4 out of 1,000, and that would be 0.4%. 0.4% chance of getting a wow. Isn't that great? Yes, 2 out of 500. That's 4 out of 1,000. That's 0.4% chance. Woo! Of getting that property. Isn't that fun? 0.4% chance of getting a landmark if that's what you're after. Keep that in mind. The two people who get the landmarks, I'm sure they're going to be tickled pink. And they're great landmarks. Again, the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. stands out as probably one of the more recognizable, better known landmarks in this country, in the United States of America. It is something that, is one of those symbols. It's one of those things that means something. It is something that if you get that landmark, ultimately, that structure is going to be buildable by you on that property with Staking Spark, and you will have that monument in the game of Upland standing as a long-term landmark in the game of Upland for people to see, and people to know where they are in the city. And for you as the owner of that property, potentially there's ways to leverage that for your own benefit. There's ways to, have MetaVentures around that, whatever the case. But it is definitely that something that just stands out as a bragging rights, if nothing else, long-term, with the dividends, of course, that go along with it. Very key here is this is a chance. This is not a guarantee. Let's take a look at something that is a little bit more of a guarantee. It is something that is a little bit more of a short-term ramp up, but we are ramping up and we are getting there. And that is this piece right here. A property lock. This is something that Upland did a vote on last week. This is such a short-term, quick ramp up that last week I was out for a few days, and it happens. Usually I travel for work. I traveled for personal reasons. wasn't able to make a show work during that period of time. And Upland had a very short period of time in which you could go and vote in the game of Upland. This is the third major vote in the game of Upland. UIP1 being the first. UIP1, that was Uplanders saying, yes, Upland, you can take UPX out of the community pool to help compensate Upland as the company for running and doing administration for the game. That payout on UPX is something that Upland's had the ability to take that UPX they get from the community pool as administrative fee to take that and resell that UPX to make USD, to make money for themselves. And that is kind of the promise of what Upland is getting from everything they do to run and administer the game. And then we had the second vote. The second major vote was to have Sparklet available and listed on the exchanges. That's what resulted in TGE. That was another approval. The community said, yes, we like the idea of Sparklet being listed as a token. We're okay with Sparklet becoming crypto. That's what happened. Ultimately, being listed on exchanges have kind of changed how it was Sparklet, some of the dynamics of Sparklet, how it's exchanged outside the game of Upland, its value, its floating value outside the game of Upland, and that floating value carried into the game. So that is something that was a big vote by the community, and we've seen the reality of that play out over the last 8 months. And now we have a final vote that was available for a shorter period of time, that was advertised for a shorter period of time, that was very consequential. And that is the lock vote. And ultimately, that lock vote is going to say the following. The proposal to lock unminted properties that have sat unminted for over 2 years has passed. That's what happened. Again, it was a 2.5 day vote period. And now we're ready to kick off the initial phase of implementation. Okay, that's locking properties that were sold over 2 years ago, or open for mint over 2 years ago, that have not yet been minted. It was a city release. There was properties. Those properties sat on the market with availability to mint them the entire time. The initial group of properties includes Queens, Chicago, Kansas City, Nashville, and Los Angeles. Remember, this is just the start. Additional cities will be included in the future. So as we have cities that have been out for longer periods of time, those with properties that are unminted, again, FSA properties are excluded, but regular non-FSA properties that have been sitting out there for 2 years, those are going to start getting locked away for an entire year, change the entire dynamics of the available properties of the game of Upland. I've got some thoughts. We'll go over those in a bit. Let's look at the real specifics here. Read all the details here. So we take a look at the city lock timeline. We have some dates. We know what's happening. We know what cities are going to happen. And it gives people a time to plan what they want to do if they want to mint some of those available properties. We have had this discussion of how do you get a city to mint out. There are a couple specifics of how do we get a city to mint out. One of them is don't put out so many dang properties to begin with. The other is have a utility for the properties that are in that city. Is there a reason to have properties in blank city that's been around for 2 years that doesn't exist for other cities? The other is discount. Is there a way to discount these properties that have been sitting there for 2 years and have people go there? The discounting kind of has been done a little bit by Upland by having these bundle sales. Some people have argued they would buy an individual property on a discount basis, but having them, in bundles with them not knowing which property they're going to get. Are they going to get a Kansas City, which they don't want, or are they going to get a property in Los Angeles, which they might more want, with a little bit of a discount applied? That is something that has been, again, something that Upland's tried a little bit. And then, finally, is if we can't sell these properties, remove them from the market. Let the game continue to grow. Have more people come in the game. When there's more people in the game, then put them back in the market. Once they are, more of an exclusive and older property. Once we are at a point where we are, seeing properties being more of a rare thing that people are questing for at a certain point, with balancing supply more with what the demand is. And I will put a quick note here for the history of Upland. There have been periods of times where there hasn't been enough mintable properties available. What that does is that puts pressure on the secondary market, and people were buying and buying and buying the secondary market, inflating values of properties, essentially making it so any property that did get minted had a value in excess of mint value immediately, or almost immediately, because there was more demand than there were available properties. And then there was this speculation, this idea that this was going to continue to happen, and people were buying properties assuming that every property was going to inflate in value in the first month and then maybe grow more in the next month after that. And again, when people bought a property up front, that's the reason they bought it. They thought they're going to sell for more than they minted it for. And then we got into this era of Upland putting out considerably more properties than there were players in the game of Upland. And the player base wasn't growing effectively, or wasn't growing exponentially as it did for a short period of time, because it did grow exponentially, the Upland player base, over a short period of time. If I remember correctly, we could date this back to 2021 to 2022, where there was a lot of player growth over a short period of time. There wasn't enough properties to keep up. Even when we had cities get minted, they got entirely minted out in hours and not days. So with that, all of that, it was something that Upland took as encouragement and put more properties out in some of these cities, and those have just sat there. So this whole concept of properties are so limited that if they get minted, they get sold at a higher rate, that wasn't the case anymore. That means people who bought properties in those cities and sat on them for 2 years, they may not have seen their property value at market value increase significantly. That's because the property next door is unminted. So if they had an opportunity to either buy the property next door at mint, or buy it from you that's right next door at whatever price you want to sell it for. And maybe you sell it for less than mint because you're trying to sell it, and you have to undersell the mint property next door in order to get a sale. So that has been the dynamic for a while. And one way to help reduce that concern, short of getting more people to come in and mint the properties in that area, is to entirely remove that property from the market. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. Again, in line with this community's decision, it was voted. 60-something% of people approved it. 30-something% said no. I will tell you off the bat, I think that it was a short vote period. I think that the concept could have been flushed out more as far as locking properties and how that gets done and why that gets done and what promises are being made about what types of properties are being brought into the future of Upland. That could have been done a little more broadly. There could have been a Q&A. This is pretty consequential. It would have been interesting. It would have been powerful if the team of Upland put more effort into, community consensus and, again, more information about how this ties into the game of Upland long term. Upland has done a better job about putting out limited portions of city, opening a new city, not minting the entire city. A portion of the city is available. Upland obviously putting out high demand portions of the city that they see up front, if they can get those areas minted out, and then coming back and doing other areas of the city, but bringing new players in the game, which is something that Upland's finally looking a little more deeply into at this time. That's also the answer is get more people in the game. That's going to be more people to buy 1 or 2 properties each, which is going to be more likely to sell out these larger cities moving forward, which means they can start looking at what that looks like to, go more than 10 or 15,000 properties per release for a city. But a city like Miami, limited number of properties, 10,000 total, percentage reserved for one form of sale or another, but we'd end up seeing the city sell out because it was a limited number of properties. It was a exclusive city. It was a city that people were very interested in, high demand, high profile, all things considered. You have to have that factor, and you have to have people who are willing to go and mint those properties as well along the way. But getting these properties tied up off the market, not available for mint, that's going to take the properties that are available for mint, the ones that have released within the last 2 years, and it's going to move some of the demand there over the next year, because you're not going to be able to go back and mint properties that have been sitting in LA for a year and a half. You're not going to, or 2 years, you're not going to be able to mint those properties in the next several months. It's going to theoretically drive demand in a different direction. It's going to reduce the overall supply of properties. So if more players are coming to the game, it creates a potential where that backlog can kind of get purchased through, can get sold through, meaning that we have more room for more properties going forward. there are some benefits in this structure or in the way this is being done. But again, I do question it being done with a vote over such a short period of time. Not all the details being given of plans moving forward about being selective about the number of properties that get brought forward, and how we're determining, or how the game of Upland, team of Upland, is determining how many properties to bring in, because this glut, all of these properties that have been sitting there for 2 years, that is because of Upland's previous strategy or previous strategies in releasing properties. So if we're giving this lock faculty, this is something that Upland players want to have happen, it would have been nice to know how Upland is treating the city releases moving forward to kind of justify why this is happening, and then why this doesn't need to happen again in a year, because Upland is being more judicious about the number of properties being released per city, and kind of growing the player base to justify the number of properties that are in the game. In line with this decision, again, all non-FSA properties in cities that have been unminted for over 2 years are going to start getting locked again on a city-by-city basis. These properties remain locked for at least 1 year. They will come back in the market at some point. It may be more than a year, but it will be at least one. Importantly, after that year, no actions will be taken on these properties without prior notification to the community. That means we won't just see these pop up as mintable properties, which has happened before. When there's a locked property for a period of time, you get this property that shows up in the city that hasn't had available properties for a while, and people go, ooh, and they go and mint that property. That's happened a few times in a few different cities. These locks expiring, these people going who are in the know and minting those properties, that is going to be something that Upland's going to prevent from happening by, whatever the sale policy is going to be, whenever these are going to unlock, having that disclosed to the community so people will know what's happening when it happens. Here's a list of the cities that are meeting the qualifications of the 2-year in the initial phase, along with their respective lock dates. So the following locks are going to go into place. Friday, November 22nd. That's this coming Friday. Queens, Chicago, Queens and Chicago are going to have locks. That means properties in Queens and Chicago that are not unminted as of right now can be minted until the 22nd, and then we're going to have a lock, and those are going to be locked for at least a year. I do want to give a caveat. The properties in Chicago have not been unminted for 2 years. The city has, but all of the properties in the city of Chicago were minted out fully at one point. Upland released City Gems and a second series of City Gems. That is properties that had been held on to, that hadn't been minted for one reason or another. They had gone and put them out into the market. The second City Gems, or withheld properties, or properties that got locked and not properly mintable in the first place, Upland repriced those to market value as opposed to having them as original mint. And when they went to reprice those, they kind of changed that dynamic as far as people coming in and wanting to mint those properties. They made a differentiated price set in one neighborhood where one property has one UPX per UP2 and a different property had a different UPX per UP2. And some people argue that really turned them off on minting those properties in the first place. It differentiated the neighborhoods that had existed for years. And theoretically, a property that had been sitting there for 2 years as non-mintable, now being mintable, it kind of changed all the neighborhood or the neighborhood around that property. So with that being said, Chicago's a different story. Those properties were not sitting there for 2 years unminted. It is worth noting that those properties being locked actually puts us back into a state we were kind of in a year and a half ago, which was the entire city was minted out, and there wasn't additional properties available. Those properties were just withheld. And again, it's just some of the same, not all of the same, some of the same properties going back into that status. Kansas City is going to lock on Friday, November 29th. Nashville, the same 29th. Los Angeles is going to lock on Friday, December 6th, 2024. But that's exactly 2 years. So, we do see that. We did see that these were all high speculation cities at one point. Los Angeles very high on the list. People talked about the sellout. How long would it take? Days, weeks. And then we found out how many bloody properties, 700,000 something thousand properties available in Los Angeles. and people are like, wow, I can see why it can't sell out. And that's what that's been. There's different neighborhoods in the city of Los Angeles that have been sold out since the week that the original city was mintable. But it is this idea that there are so bloody many properties, and some properties are in areas that people in the real world don't have high speculation in. They're not super interested in. There's different UPX per UP2 for different properties, different areas. So with so many properties in such a large city, it's not too surprising in retrospect to see so many properties left in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles was a high speculation. Queens was a high speculation. People asking for it, but it's just the same thing. So many properties. The high speculation properties in areas that tied to real world areas where people have a lot of interest, where there's a lot going on, where there's history, where there are landmarks, real world landmarks. Those areas tend to sell out relatively quickly. You end up with this sporadic set of properties that don't have as much interest, that are going to sit there for a long time, and that's what ultimately is being locked here. That means we're going to go from all of these cities being unminted or not minted out. We're going to have a day less than a month from now where Los Angeles is going to be entirely minted. It's not truly entirely minted, but it's entirely minted that every mintable property that's non-FSA is minted. That means that if you want a property in Los Angeles, you're going to have to buy in the secondary. And how many players are there in Upland right now? About 30,000 daily active users. That number is going to continue to change, but about 30,000 daily active wallets. So any given day, anywhere between 20-something thousand and 40-something thousand, different days, different amounts of daily active wallets is going to be something you're going to see in the game of Upland. Some of that is going to be activity with people who are just doing logins to earn Spark incentives, that seven login streak to get a Spark incentive. Some of that is going to be people who are racing every single day. Some of that's going to be people who are coming in just to collect their dividends, and maybe they're looking and seeing what's happening in properties in their neighborhoods, who minted what, did something get sold in the secondary. And some of that's going to be people who are doing multiple things throughout every single day. But yes, WW Dog, this is going to be something, and Wolf Warner, great to see you. I'm glad you're here. WW Dog, this is going to be something that we are going to see be, kind of scaled, different players doing different things. But yes, about 30,000 daily active users. We were at about 100,000 or 120,000 monthly active wallets. That's individual wallets that log in at least once per month. I've seen that number go down a little bit. That number jumped a little bit with over the Sparkle over the summer, but it's somewhere in that range. 30,000 daily active users, a little on the south side of that right now. Someone in the vicinity of 120,000 unique wallets. Again, at least one time in the month. Please note, this is just the initial group of cities being locked. Additional cities over 2 years old will include future property lock updates. Additionally, although Beverly Hills is within Los Angeles, properties in that neighborhood were never available. Again, this was being released in the special set. Properties weren't never made available. They were held and locked. But I'm going to argue that if we're doing this with Beverly Hills, those properties in Chicago that were released a year ago or whatever it was, I don't want to go to the math, but when the properties, the hidden gems were released, those were not open for that entire 2 years, but they were open for a period of time. So the argument could be made that just like Beverly Hills, Chicago should be exempt, or could be exempt, because those properties wouldn't have been able to full 2 years. But let's be honest, the properties in Chicago that have been sitting there for the last year, those are, I wouldn't say scuzzy properties. Those are properties that people don't have an interest in, partially because of the way that Hidden Gems, that last run of Hidden Gems, was done by Upland. The repricing really spoiled the fun for a lot of people as far as those neighborhoods were left. If they came out at the original UPX per UP2 mint price, the same UPX per UP2 that the original properties minted in that neighborhood were minted at, that would have been a differentiated circumstance. That would have been more interesting for people. That said, the properties that are in Beverly Hills, since they were never made available for regular minting, Those properties will continue to be included in bundles. They'll continue to be available. The key note here is the properties that are locked, they won't be in bundles. They won't be for sale, mintable directly, again, at least a year. We're excited to see the community come together to shape the future of the Upland ecosystem. Again, this technically was a community vote. Limited period of time, limited Q&A, limited future notes. Upland only said so much about how this will affect the future of city releases. I would have liked to see Upland talk about their plans for city releases and thresholding, how many people have to be daily active users, how many new players we have to acquire if they want to put out blank number of properties. If that was the case, then it would make more sense to lock properties. In this case, we locked a bunch of properties. Is it just so that Upland can put new properties out that we're going to have cities that don't sell out? I sincerely hope not. I really think that since we're locking so many properties here, when people have an itch, when people want to get a new property, when new players come into the game, that is going to push some of that activity into the cities that still have properties that are available, concentrating that demand. And then potentially, because you restricted the demand or the ability to fulfill the demand in Los Angeles, you're going to see that secondary market grow some again. This is up to the community. If people don't see a need or reason to continue to buy properties in the city of Los Angeles, we're not going to see many more properties sell. We're not going to see a significant more properties to sell. If there's a reason to have properties in Los Angeles, as far as the community is concerned, there aren't any mintable properties available. That's when we're going to see people buy up that bottom, where people continuing to buy properties in Los Angeles to have for whatever utility they see and they want to have property for. New players coming in, they never had a chance to mint a property in Los Angeles. They want a property in Los Angeles. Guess what? They're buying it on the secondary, and that's going to be the case. So before you sign off, you need to check car traveling. Why, yes, I do. I do need to check my car traveling. 17 minutes is not there yet. My car's not there yet. At this point, we can go and see if I can see the stats on that car as that car continues to travel. Towards Fresno. Let's see if I can see any update on that car. We're going to go back to our cars over here. Here's my vehicle. We know my vehicle is this one right here that is in the process of traveling. As it's traveling, we see the following. We see the charge says that it's 100%. The charge is not going to, you cannot charge your car while it's traveling. Please wait until your journey is completed before you can proceed with charging. Again, we can't see the cost of the travel until it gets to its place, its location. It's in travel. I can't change travel in between the two cities. We do see it still says that it's fully charged, and we see that it's in travel status right now. So that's what we're going to see as that vehicle is traveling between locations. And City Pigeon, I get your point. I would like to see it once it arrives to see what the remaining balance is and the cost to charge. But as of right now, it is in process. It is traveling. When it arrives, I'd love to go take a peek, because I haven't done this yet. Let's be fair. I haven't yet gotten the chance to travel and see the amount, the balance, and what's left for the charging status. So we will get into that. We will be able to, at the very least, see that tomorrow. So that is something worth knowing there. There are a couple updates that did happen today that are worth noting. The first was a update here for Stock Car event update. This is to answer questions that weren't answered in the original announcement. First and foremost was the event does run from Tuesday, November 19th, 9 a.m. PT to Friday, November 29th, 9 a.m. TT. That was in the announcement, but that's kind of a key takeaway. The objective is to complete 70 races. Each race time will be used as your individual lap time. And again, Upland's calling it lap time, but it's races added up, not laps added up. There will only be one leaderboard and Stock Car Pro cars with an MPS of 174 to 270. So all of Stock Car Pro Series cars, all Stock Car cars are going to be competitive. It's not just going to be one class. You're not going to have a different class for each car. The Upland did update that, or did clarify that for people who did have questions. So that's a key thing there. And again, another announcement here. we keep seeing this, and I'd like to see it get better. I'd like to see it not be the case anymore, but it does keep happening. And that is, we see this every Monday when we expect a pass to come out. They get delayed quite often. NFLPA week number 10 passes will be open for exchange at some point, but not today due to some delays in data and game performance. Again, this is key. Upland gets that data. Upland passes the data. Upland puts out the puts out the mementos. Those mementos were originally scheduled out a period of time so that there is time to process that. And that delay here, unfortunately, is something that we've seen a few times here. So watch out. Passes should be open tomorrow, Tuesday the 19th at 9:30 a.m. Not a huge delay, one day, but ultimately, if you were trying to get those exchanged today and you weren't able to do so, your exchange is going to be open tomorrow. That is going to be Week 10 passes exchangeable tomorrow, November 19th, 9:30 a.m. PT. Well, another key note here, again, this is something that did start the day. We're doing some updates. And again, this had happened very early in the day yesterday, or it's today, yesterday, whichever day you are, the 18th. Some updates to assist with the delivery of the Sparklet utility. Those were something that when they were being pushed, some of the utilities in the game were affected. That means travel had to be affected during that period of time. Due to this, travel may not be accessible. If you are currently traveling, you will be able to complete whatever travel you're on. But again, it was a period of time where the opportunity to start a new travel between cities was not available for a period of time. And again, that did get resolved later in the day. This process will likely take a few hours. Again, it did early in the day. So with that said, we've got a few takeaways. First takeaway is we have a new structure of the game of Upland and travel where there isn't an added cost that wasn't there before. That is the cost to use Sparklet, to stake on a car, to increase the charge so that you can travel between cities. We do have more flights or more opportunity for private flight, more terminals coming to the game of Upland. Those terminals are coming in the form of bundles. The pricing is the pricing. Those are randomized bundles, so you don't know what you're going to get. You're paying the same amount as the person who gets the brass ring. You're going to get what you get. I've argued before that in the randomized placement in the order, that's fine, where 600 or 6,000 people register. The person who gets lucky gets up in the front, and then they get the thing, and the guy who's not doesn't. But if you know what you're paying for when you pay for it, you're opening your wallet, you're pulling out your credit card, you're spending real $300. It's nice to know what you're getting. These pack hit rarities, that is something that's existed in crypto, that's existed in NFTs, that's existed in collectibles for a long time. So people do 100% subscribe to this, and they're happy to do this where they're willing to pay a relatively large amount of money for a chance at something good. You're still going to get something regardless. You get something, but you're not necessarily getting that brass ring. You're not necessarily getting that big prize all the time. You are trying for the big prize, but you aren't guaranteeing that's what you're getting. So that is something that, again, people are happy to do, but keep in mind, if you're going to spend up to $300, and more power to you if you're going to. If you're going to spend the $300, just know what you're getting. Know that you have a 12.4% chance of getting a terminal. Know that there's a 50% chance you might get a collection, but you don't know what that collection property is. What level of collection it is. What type of collection, rarity of collection it is. If you do get that collection property, if you don't have the other two, it's never really going to be a collection. It might have a differentiated value at property as a property that you can sell on market value, but it is not necessarily going to be directly a collection for you. You still have to get additional properties to complete that collection. And again, this is something that we've seen happen a few times in the game of Upland, where it's a high price overall. You have to kind of question whether the high price, the cost of the overall composite sale makes sense for you when you go to purchase. I will put this other figure out real quick. There are 500 of these available. They are priced at $300 a piece. when they sell out, basic math is we're talking about 100. Yes, that's the correct number. $150,000. That's what we're talking about. The composite value of this overall. That's what Upland is charging for people to buy these bundles. They sell out $150,000. And when I look at these type of large sales, I say, is the composite cost the $150,000? Does that line up with the value of properties that are in there? I can't necessarily do that math because we don't know all the data about the properties that are in there. Some of the properties may be worth considerably more than the 300,000 UPIX that I'm kind of associating that Upland is going to give at or above. So that aside, that set aside, it's really hard to do that math. But you can look at the likely USD value. There are 10 properties that have a value of about $1,500. That's about $15,000 in value on those international terminals. We know what they sell for. They sell for about $1,500 USD. 10 of those available. That's about $150. So there's about $150,000 in property bundles sold to get $15,000 with the international terminals. Plus, in addition to those $15,000 worth of property terminals, there's 50 of those terminals, of those private aviation terminals. Are private aviation terminals, or should they be appropriately priced at $400? Like people end up paying, or like generally priced out $400 for a train terminal, or should it be closer to $1,000 like a domestic plane terminal? That's a tough question. That's going to be a math for somebody else. But ultimately, they do have differentiated from one city to the next what the dividends are on those properties. That considered with differentiated dividends, that is something that is a hard math to do. They're sold in these bundles, so people aren't really paying a specific price for them. They kind of distribute overall. But if you said they're worth $500-$600 a piece, we could say there's 50 of those at $600. Yeah, 50 of those at $600. So we could say that's $30,000 worth of value there, plus that $15,000 for the international. We could say that's $45,000 worth of value there. Add in the landmarks. Landmarks are a tough thing to put a value on because, again, USD to UPIX, you have a mint value. We've had sales in USD before. We've had them sell at their mint value in USD, or exceeded them and have a lower mint value than what people even paid for them in USD. So, that's a hard thing to say. But even if you added those dividends together, or the mint value that has the dividend tied to it together, you're looking at another 3.5. That math. Another a little over 10,000 there. Even with that all considered, you're looking at $55,000 worth of the sweeteners. And then you have all these other properties in there that are going to be UPIX-driven properties that, theoretically, people would have had the opportunity to mint in UPIX at theoretically 300,000 UPIX or more for 3 of those properties on average. And then you ask yourself, with the $50,000 plus or minus worth of sweeteners, does it justify the $150,000 price tag overall? That's for people to decide on a one-to-one basis. Again, if you're the person who gets the gold ring or the brass ring, if you're the person who gets lucky and gets the landmark, if you're the person who gets the international terminal, you're probably going to be happy. If you spent $300 and you get a private terminal, I think you'll be pretty happy. If you spend $300 and you get 3 properties that are 100,000 UPIX each in Kansas City, that's up to you. If you really want those properties in Kansas City, one of them is a collection, more power to you. Smile as broad and as bright as you choose to. But again, that is something to consider, is that the majority of people, 87.6% of people who buy one of these bundles, will not get a terminal or a landmark. Keep that in mind. For tonight, thank you so much for being here Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Back at it. Keep it up. We're back to doing this daily. I'm glad to be back to to do so. Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. PT here in the Upland Cafe on YouTube, on Twitter. And if you're in the Upland Cafe, as always, feel free to unmute your mics. The floor is yours.